Hello and welcome to the Frustration of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Troy Eadie, and I've got Mark Rogerson here today. Welcome.
Troy, how you going?
Good. So yeah, today, look, I've asked Mark to come along because, both of us have a very common passion, which is professional service firms, so like accountants, lawyers, architects, engineers. And, the more time that I spend with Mark, it's like we just geek out on the topic. And I really like the way that you look at business. We've got quite a few accountants as clients, and I think just the way you look at business, the way you approach it, and some of the models that you have are really good in terms of how to grow a firm, how to manage the cash, and even in terms of how to grow the fee base is quite unique. So yeah, I really look forward to kind of breaking this down for the audience today.
Thanks, Troy.
And getting into it. So yeah, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Mark Rogerson. I'm an owner in an accounting firm called Rogerson Kenny Business Accountants. So we're in Mount Waverley. We've got 30 odd staff, and one of our areas of focus is professional services firms. So as you mentioned before, and I think it's interesting to note at this point as well, that every business has 4, 5, 6 areas of focus, whether they know it or not, and that's one for us. So I guess when you have a focus, you develop IP and some specialisation and key contacts, etc. So we're pretty passionate about professional services firms. We're a professional service firm ourselves. We don't do everything right, but we do a lot right. We try a lot of things, and we sort of can impart that onto our clients. We sort of get to be able to walk the walk. We're not just sitting there and not having done it. So we're a pretty open book with our clients. So we've all got, most professional services firms are pretty similar in how they operate.
Yep. And
we're no different. And so we can share those learnings with our clients, which we do, quite readily. Yep.
Yeah, good. So let's get into it. So today, I wanted to bring Mark in because the way he looks at growing a professional service firm and some of the models that you use and some of the things that I see you do with some of our mutual clients, I think is exceptional. So maybe if we start with, what if you were to recommend a process to grow a firm, where would you start, and what would be some of the steps that you would follow?
Yeah, it's a big topic, isn't it? Yeah, it's a big topic. So how to grow your professional service firm? I think, Troy, if you are an owner and you've got 5 staff, 20 staff, whatever it might be, I think it's important to sort of step back. Well, how's that number the right number? And number of staff, how is the size of the business now right? How have you got to that spot? Has it been fairly consistent over the last 5 or 10 years? Troy, you a new partner or owner in this professional services business? So I think it's sort of really important. It's not just, okay, let's grow, let's get a whiz-bang marketing campaign and let's go for it. It's there's so much around it, which I typically refer to as the organisational architecture, which we'll discuss. But I think there's so much around how to grow and where you've been and where you're going.
So just on that, I think what I find is that sometimes, a lot of people do want to grow, or firms want to grow, but very rarely are they very clear on what that growth is. Sometimes when you pull it apart, most of the time they're pretty happy sometimes with the size of the firm, but what they're extracting from the firm's not enough. So even that then changes the strategic direction, because if it's just about becoming a bit more profitable so you can extract more dividends, or the business is less stress, it's a different goal. So so really that first step is being really clear on what growth is.
One of the things I like to sort of play out to legal firms, and it's only fairly recent. This is a bit quirky and different, I suppose, but has anyone out there seen the movie The Founder with Ray Kroc? It's a story of McDonald's. Ray Kroc called himself the founder, but he wasn't technically. The McDonald's brothers were, but he was the founder of the McDonald's franchise, I suppose. And the movie starts, if you want to stop this and Google all of a sudden, or YouTube, The Founder opening scene, and then come back, at the founder of the opening scene. It's about 2 minutes, and it's Ray Kroc. And if you can picture, Ray's probably in his 50s. It's in America in the 60s, and he seems to be in business for himself, reasonably comfortable, and he's selling 5 head or so spindle milkshake mixing machines. And if you can imagine America in the 60s, it's cafes and diners, waitresses on roller skates coming out to your car, taking orders, etc. So the scene starts where he's actually selling this 5 spindle mixer, and the guy's sort of, or the theme seems to be the customer he has doesn't have enough work for the single spindle mixer he's got, and so is sort of saying, well, why would I want the 5 head when I've barely got enough work for the single head? And Ray's sort of take is, well, it's been declining because our customers come to order a milkshake, they're in for a fantastic wait, they're not going to make that mistake again, they just won't make the order. So Ray's analogy is you increase the supply and the demand will follow, and that's something I really like to play out to legal firms. And there's lots around that. It's not as simple as just putting more staff on and it works, you grow. But that's sort of the starting point for me. Okay, we need to ultimately increase the supply and then be able to feed the demand in through various ways. But that's sort of the analogy I like to use.
And I think that's one thing where I think you and I are very much aligned. Like, I think a lot of people focus on trying to fill the bucket, turn the tap on, and let's put 2 taps. But more often than not, it's about having a bigger, stronger bucket, and the water will follow, But it's counterintuitive. And I think too often people, we've just been conditioned that if we want to grow our firm, we need to be heavily focused on marketing and sales and hunting for the work. But I really like this methodology of increasing the supply, and the demand will follow.
And look, you do that in my take, you've got to have that organisational architecture right. So the first stop for me is the ownership structure of the firm, and that's one of the first discussions. What's the owners? Sorry, who are the owners? What do they actually want? Are they all on the same page? Which often not always. Do they actually want to grow, and do they appreciate what growth looks like? So if your professional services firm now has 2 or 3 owners, and it's quite a flat structure, so does everything go through those owners? Are they reviewing everything? Are they holding all the key relationships? Are they dealing with all the staff? So if you sort of drew your organisational structure, is it your 3 owners at the top and then 20 staff down below, and everyone reports into everyone for everything sort of thing? Is that the structure now? And are those owners on board? They might be on board with the notion of growth, but then it's what actually comes behind that or comes with that. And that's, the first thing is that they sort of have to give up a little bit, have to perhaps segment their roles into what they're good at, or what they are, where their strengths lay. They have to perhaps give managing people to someone else. They perhaps have to give managing some key clients or relationships to somebody else in the firm. So all of a sudden there's this notion of, gee, am I losing control a little bit? We've always done it this way. We've been fairly successful with 3 partners and about 20 staff. How much do we want to change here? Do we want that, sort of leading into sort of my second point, I suppose, but that's team structure and capabilities. Do we want to change our structure dramatically? And the growth is probably driven by potentially a younger partner or someone in the firm that's potentially not extracting as much as they would like to, but then you might have some other partners that are achieving what they want. Or you might even be running the firm yourself, and you say you want growth, but then in reality the growth of the firm just equals more stress and more work for you. So it's growth is a great idea, but then getting it done in reality just doesn't happen because of because the capacity is not there. No, you're right. If you just grow with the model not changing, so if you're just going to say, we're 3 partners, we're 20 staff in whatever you're doing, a marketing firm or engineering firm, whatever it might be. If you're just then going to grow and keeping everything the same, then you're just going to add to the owner's stresses and workloads, because everyone's busy already. There's no getting away from that. So I think that's where, the owners have to be on board with it. they've got to want to give up perhaps a little bit of control. Doesn't mean they give up total control, but a little bit of control, and that leads into having the right team structure and capabilities.
Yeah.
And team structure, that's having the structure set up so there's perhaps people other than the owners managing other people. There's perhaps teams managing managing people. You might have 3 or 4 in a particular team. So you've got a team leader and leading 2 or 3 or 4 younger people. And that's team structure and capabilities. The question is, do those people have the capabilities often in a professional services firm? The firm grows, the people are quite technically proficient, but they don't have the capabilities around managing workflow, managing staff, being able to leverage and delegate. So that's a big consideration when you want to grow. Is the structure of the team and the capabilities of the team.
Yeah, and I think something interesting to point here too is that once you change a structure, I don't think people should be so just like hold on to it with dear life. Sometimes like there's a specific client I'm thinking of that in 12 months with working with them, they went through 3 different structures, and that's because they grew pretty fast. But at each of the points, we had to put in a certain management layer, or we had to change the teams around, and then implemented direct sales people to support the firm. But if you change, let's say they go away now and they set a new structure, and then 6 months from now, you're too reluctant to change the structure because success came from that structure, then you're causing the same problem. So be okay to define a structure now. That new structure will create capability and capacity, but then once your business grows, you've got to be okay to be willing to put the structure back on the drawing board to continue that growth.
Yeah, look, structure is going to evolve with the business. I don't think there's any right structure for any one business. It's going to keep evolving and growing as the business and the capabilities grow, and change and evolve and etc. So your structure is really something that's going to be quite fluid. In theory, Troy, every time you put a new person on, the structure changes.
There you go.
Every time someone leaves, the structure changes.
Yep.
And whether you know it or not, like if an admin support person leaves, they would have been doing specific tasks that now is being either replaced or shared. But I can guarantee you that the person who comes in to replace the person who's left won't be doing exactly the same task. So all of a sudden you've got a change in structure and who's doing what.
Yeah.
And that's the same right through the firm. So I think the big headline picture on the structure and the changes that are required are that you've got to have delegation and you've got to have some management of people other than being from the owners.
Yeah.
That's probably the key things, for that traditional professional services firm of, even one owner and 8 staff. If you want to grow and bring in another owner, that one owner can't then be looking after 30 staff, without some changes in the structure.
And look, a general rule of thumb, I think, is between 5 to 7 people. That's really the sweet spot. And if you're handling more than 7 people, more often than not, that 8th or 9th person is probably running quite independent. And there'll be times where you're happy with their performance, and there'll be times where you're not so happy. And I think, the whole purpose of structure is around the clarity and areas that people are responsible for. If you've got that should enable people to really specialize in their area, and then you'll have a team that's focused on, if everyone plays their part, we're all kicking goals. Yeah. But if you've got one person trying to be the all-star player, that's where you're strangling the capacity.
Well, and growth. Because you can't grow if you've got, like I said, 3 owners and 20 staff. That's because your analogy, everyone's managing 5 to 7 people. That's the max you can. That's the maximum you can look after. So to grow, then you've got to grow the ownership structure, and not everyone wants to do that. So I always think, it's how do you grow with the current ownership structure? That's how you make some good money. If you just grow in a traditional partnership model, okay, we want to grow, we'll put on another 5 staff and another owner. The pie's not getting bigger.
No.
Are you putting, there's more people feasting out of the one trough, so you've got to grow that trough, but no one's actually eating anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess, look, how to grow, the owners have to be on board, team structure and capabilities. And for me, that then leads into systems and processes. What are the systems and processes in the place? Is everything being done as efficiently as possible? Is there a workflow? map for your different departments or different teams. Does everyone know what they're doing? Is their best practice or one way templates, checklist systems, not 15 different ways in the firm, which is common.
Yeah, and a lot of recreation of the same thing.
Yeah. Is technology being used to its best level? I'm not talking technology just for the sake of putting in a new app or software because it's new, but technology where it's really driving efficiency and making a difference.
Well, that's right.
Is that being followed, or is the firm sort of reverting to, no, that's how we've always done it?
Yeah.
We're still doing a lot of this, etc. So it's hand on heart. Are we best practice systems and processes in the firm?
Yeah.
And then, I think then that leads into, you sort of get those things right, or you're addressing those things, and then it comes into perhaps the more traditional marketing and sales. So you, and I guess tying back to Michael Keaton or Ray Kroc in The Founder, it's about being able to increase the supply, and the demand will follow. So I guess that's what we're working through. Okay, you've got to get the owners on board, you've got to get the team structure and their capabilities right, you've got to have the systems and processes right. And I sort of feel once you've nailed those things or got a handle on those, then it's about, okay, how do we increase the demand, or how do we get that demand, which is driven usually from marketing and then sales.
Yeah. But I think what I like about the way that you think and where we align is what we see as marketing and sales. And, I think traditionally marketing and sales is, so marketing might be defined as placing an ad on Facebook, LinkedIn, something like that, holding a seminar or something. But I think if you go back to the Ray Kroc or the founder analogy, it's about increasing the supply. And particularly with a firm, being able to free up your team. So if all of your team are following systems and procedures, they're very clear on what their roles and responsibilities are, what their KPIs are, and they're working towards that. And if we can, instead of aim to be just like always chock-a-block filling their plate, if we can aim for them to be, less stress and more space in their mind, they can identify more opportunities and actually want growth. And it sounds counterintuitive, but if your team has the space for growth, the growth will come. Instead of you've got one person that just wants to put a bunch of money in some marketing, but then more often than not, I'll go into a firm, they've got leads coming in, but the quotes aren't going out on time. Maybe there's not enough analysis or consulting up front, which is eroding trust, which is why they lose the gig potentially. And so, sometimes there's not enough space in the firm or the people's minds to actually want to bring more work in. So I think if you think of marketing in terms of having a clear strategy for the firm, having a clear structure and the things that you've been talking about, having good systems in place, reduces stress, opens up the culture to want to grow, and just watch the opportunities come in from existing clients, and then watch your existing clients refer.
I've eaten enough McDonald's in my life, so I'm sure the founder's not going to chase me for royalties on this, but one of the things under the systems and processes that we've spoken about, if you watch the movie, one of the reasons why McDonald's was so successful in the early days was the McDonald's brothers invented this speedy system of delivering all their hamburgers and cooking the food and all that sort of stuff. So you go back to an American diner in the 60s, you could wait half an hour for your food. Whereas McDonald's, you sort of walked up to the window and you had it within seconds, 20, 30 seconds, it was all there. And there was a few things around that that I think relates to professional services firms, they've got their systems and processes so right. All the staff was so clear in what they were doing. Their workflow was absolutely spot on, and they kept improving it until they got it right. And then I sort of think under the marketing and sales bucket, and I'll talk about this in a second more detail, but their marketing and sales, they didn't seem to go out and market in the traditional sense. They had areas of focus, and the areas of focus were, I think the McDonald's brothers analysed all their sales for the last however many years, and they worked out their biggest sellers by far were burgers, fries and shakes, and so that's all they sold. So I think they had a clear area of focus. So for a professional services firm, I think under the marketing and sales bucket, you need to have clear areas of focus of what you're going to specialise in.
What are you known for?
Yeah. What are you known for? What are you famous for? And for us as an accounting firm, we're a professional service firm. One of our areas of focus is professional services firms. So it's doing stuff like this, developing IP and knowledge. Our staff know what they're doing. We can advise on more than just the tax and accounting stuff.
Yep.
And that's what comes out of having a focus. So I think it's really important.
An interesting analogy. Because let's say for a second we move into manufacturing and we're going to produce shampoo. So we're going to set up a factory line that the raw materials come in, all the machines will pretty much do one task, and then out the end comes the shampoo. Now, what if a customer came to you and said, "Oh, can you make a soap?" And it's, you've got the materials, but now try and make soap. Like, that manufacturer is just going to say, "Buddy, sorry, we don't do soap, we only do shampoo. Do you want shampoo? No, okay, leave it." But then come back into a professional service firm and someone goes up to the partner and says, "Can you do some soap for us?"
Soap,
yeah. And then what happens? So because you don't see it as a factory line, and it's not, but the analogy comes back to capacity, efficiency, being a specialist, being great at what you do. And if you put more of the same type of work in, so in your example, professional service firms, so more firms come in, you've got the systems and procedures, your team have dealt with it and seen these situations time and time again. So the client's going to get a much better support as opposed to going to an accountant that specialises in restaurants or hotels. And they're going to do the best that they can and probably draw some analogies from that industry. But if you're putting different types of work into this machine, that's where the inefficiencies are. That's where the stress is caused. That's where the bottlenecks of asking more and more questions. It's hard to systematize it all because you're creating unique approaches all the time. You can see where the bottleneck happens, and then you're wondering why the firm's not growing because everyone's got too much on their plate to even think about growth.
And so many other businesses you allude to. A manufacturing firm, they do it better than what professional services firms do. You even think of plumbers. There's all different types of plumbers. They've understood actually what they're specialising in. It's something that we sort of, I think, need to improve on. And I'll go back to, every business has 3 or 4 areas of focus. You need some things you're famous for, and develop your IP and content around those, and develop a plan, like a marketing plan, for each one of those areas. So the final part, I think, with how to grow, and this isn't critical, I don't think, but it can really boost the firm, and that's if your staff have the capabilities to identify and be able to communicate opportunities. So if your staff have the capabilities, that there's a $5,000 project that you're doing, and all of a sudden they find something, or they're able to communicate to the client, and that turns into a $10,000 project, and both parties are winning. The client didn't realise they need it, and the professional service firm, and that's what a professional service firm. We're selling. We're solving problems for clients with solutions they didn't know they needed.
Well,
That's what we're doing. They're not coming to us because they know the answer, and a lot of times they don't even know what the question is. So I go back to we're solving problems for them they didn't know they had with solutions they didn't know they needed. So, are your staff able to identify and communicate those opportunities? It's not necessary, I don't think, in growing your firm, but it's something to have a think about.
Yeah. Well, look, I think if a firm had an option, and option A was to inject some cash into some kind of marketing campaign, or B, to put the right structure in place, put the right systems in place, support the team to be great at what they do, free them up a little bit so they can identify more opportunities or go that extra mile with existing customers or clients. So if they've got those 2 options, 1, marketing, 2, increasing capability and capacity within the team, if you were to say to me which one will grow the firm faster, it'd definitely be option B. And I've even done this before in our workshops at the MCG, where I'll ask the entire audience, who here has grown their firm by some unique marketing campaign? Raise your hand. No one does. And then who here has grown their firm from doing what they do really well, that they grow from referrals. So if you were to inject a marketing campaign, wouldn't it be one that actually supports the thing that's working already?
That's right. And I think, you asked me at the start, how to grow your legal firm. And I think one of the last things was the marketing and sales. Let's get your systems and structures right. It's let your people do what they do best. Let's get the owners on board and create, it's creating that capacity, isn't it? To be able to do that. Yeah. So it's a really good point.
Yeah. Great. Good. So the other day I was talking to you and what was it? The black
hole.
Yeah, tell us about that.
The black hole. The black hole between capacity and billings.
Yeah, I really like this concept. I think, and particularly for professional service firms, like I think, a lot of people, they go into business, and whether you like it or not, we're in it to produce a profit and to support the business, everyone in it, and ourselves and our families. But too often, an owner or some partners, they might look at the bank account. There's not enough there, and the way, and there's too much focus on the money. But our firms operate literally by time. So time is the process almost, and then the end outcome is the money. So I like this concept because if you focus on the time, the money will come.
Yeah, no, that's right. Look, I think it's the capacity of a firm. Capacity via your billings. It's when we go into a professional services firm for the first time. It's one of the first things I'll ask. What's your capacity? And the answer to that is your capacity is how much money can your firm generate? Like, what are you actually able to do? Because that's all we're selling. We're selling time. So what's the input function of the firm? And the black hole for me. So if say your capacity is $6 million and you're billing $5 million or $4.5 million, you've got a $1 or $1.5 million black hole. Yeah. Where's that going? What's it going in? Yep. And I guess just to take a step back a bit, everyone loves a quick win. Grab your calculator if you sort of do your full-time equivalent staff in your business, and times that number, divide that number into your last year's billings. That's going to give you a figure. So if that figure, that's per full-time equivalent, so that's professional staff, like a fee earner or admin person. So that's your total firm. So your total firm staff number into your billing last year. If that figure's less than 140,000 per full-time equivalent, then you're underachieving or underperforming. Top professional services firms, can be high 100s up to the 200s per person, and then everything sort of in between. So it's a bit of a quick win. It's also interesting to do it over the last 5 years. So you can sort of plot your firm's full-time equivalents versus your billings, have a number over the last 5 years. You might be able to see times when you've been growing and you've had to increase the supply a little bit, or the capacity. So you've put on one or two people, and that hasn't straight away come out in billings, because our expenses are in blocks, but our revenue goes linear. Yeah. So there's often a time there where our expenses will get close to our linear revenue, if you like, on a graph. But something sort of interesting to do. And we'll have as part of this, we'll have a download available as well with a bit of a capacity planner. But just to have a think about this, and this capacity v billings, it's not about how you bill, because I can hear people now going to be, yelling out, we don't bill on time, we bill on value, we do fixed fee, et cetera, et cetera. It's not about that. I don't care how you bill. It's about measuring the inputs, and that input is time. Yeah. So just to go back a step, how to calculate capacity. There's 1,950 hours available in a year. And that's built up 7.5 hours a day times 5 days times 52 weeks. That's 1,950 hours. We take away 150 hours for holidays, 75 hours for sick and personal leave, 75 hours for public holidays. Yep. and then left with 1,650 hours. So your 52 weeks whittles back to 44 weeks. That's available time. So in theory, we're paying someone for 1,950 hours, but we've only got them for 1,650. And then it's about, okay, how productive are they? So there's lots of, methods or rules. Is it 80%? Is it 85%?
Yeah.
Do we expect them to bill 5 hours a day? What does that look like? And you might not know because you're doing value based, but that's sort of where we help you and say, well, look, let's at least try this number and see what it looks like. For example. So as an example, if your staff are 85% productive, that means they should be billing about 1,400 hours a year because they've got 1,650 available. They're going to be 85% productive on that. That's about 1,400 hours or 6.37 a day to get precise. So is that the right number or not? Some professional services firms use 5 hours a day. And if it's 5 hours a day, that's 1,100 hours a year. So you're paying someone for 1,950, you've got them available for 1,650, and then you're turning around and saying, of that 1,650, we're expecting 2/3 to be billable.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, isn't it?
Well, when you put it like that.
That's where
definitely.
It sits. Yeah, that's where it sits. So that's it's one of those things. When we first start working on the capacity, what's the capacity, and we've got to work through things like how many staff you have, who are the fee earners, what's their full-time equivalency. They 3-4 days a week. What's their charge-out rate? What are we expecting them to bill? What are we expecting them to do 5 hours a day or 6 hours a day or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
And we sort of build that up. So it's a bit of argy-bargy to get that right, but it's a basic spreadsheet. We're happy to have that as a bit of a download, but
good.
it's a basic spreadsheet that you can sort of fill out, and then you get a number down the bottom, and then you can compare that number to what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
And you say, gee, are we right or wrong? And we find too with professional
services, black hole.
That's right. And we find with professional services firms, there's all manner of rule of thumb for that particular professional services industry. Because staff are expected to do different things. There might be a big expectation where the staff have to do business development, for example. So doing 7 hours a day on average for 5 days a week over 44 weeks isn't possible because there's times you've got to go and win business and all that sort of stuff.
Or manage people. Or
manage all that sort of thing.
Training.
So and we actually find it's going to be different per person. So you might be 5 hours a day, the person next to you might be 6 hours a day. Because you've got a team, the other person doesn't.
Yeah, some might be team leaders or
et cetera. Some might have a bend in developing business, and so they spend a bit of time out of the office unproductive.
Yep.
That's all fine. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's just about trying to get that number and understand it, and then compare it back to what you're actually doing, and then leading into this topic, finding out or understanding what's the black hole between what you're actually billing and what your capacity says your gap is.
That's right, and then you'll have good data to be able to figure out how to bridge that. Like I think, so 'cause you're the numbers man, and then, for me and my team, it's about using those numbers to make smart decisions. For if we go into a firm and they don't have metrics around the work that's coming in, so the number of inquiries, number of quotes, jobs won, average of sales, turnaround time of quotes, things like that. And then if they don't have metrics on what their utilization is or their billing rate, efficiency or write-offs, and then through to that goes into the P&L numbers, which and then debtor days. If we've got that spread of data, we can make very quick decisions, implement systems, implement training and support with the right people to move the business forward. But where we can be really hamstrung in terms of helping a client, and also for you to help yourself, is when you don't have that data, because then it's all just based on feelings. Where do you think your business is being held back? Where do you think your black hole is? Yep. And then it's based on a feeling. Whereas if we've just got the data and the data's there, so it might take a bit of effort, and they'll probably need someone like you to set up the systems to be able to create the data on a regular basis. But from that point onwards, that effort, that initial level of investment to set it up, I think it will well and truly pay dividends, because the speed in which you can fill the black hole or implement systems
understand it, isn't
accurately. That's right. Yeah.
The old saying goes, what you don't measure, you don't manage. And I think there's nothing truer. And I go back to, I don't care how you bill, if it's value-based, fixed fee, whatever. It's not about that. And I think that's where in professional services this gets lost. It's not about how you bill. We're talking about how you're measuring. And so if you're measuring, then you can manage. You can find out who's underperforming. It's not about a witch hunt. It's about, okay, why is this person not performing? What tools can we give them to perform better?
What support?
How do we free them up? Like, what are we doing here? And that's what
I
it's all
think
about.
you can also make very good strategic decisions. One of our clients, an engineering firm, they used to do structural engineering for the residential industry. We've completely banned that work from this firm now because it was rife full of
so
inefficient. The builders wouldn't pay. There was just so many issues the whole way through the process. The job would be completed and invoiced, and we're still logging time on it. Because they'll come back during the construction phase or something like that. But so how can you choose strategically what work or what type of client and what services you want to provide if you don't have the data to know whether even that's even profitable?
Yeah, that's right. And that's where it gets back to this measurement gets back to, I guess it builds up to the firm as a whole, but it starts at individual level. So it's what's the individual doing, then you build up to what's the team doing, and then you're building up to the firm, other wider firm. And I think, otherwise you're just working on hearsay and feelings, and who knows? But it's not backed by analytical data, is it?
No.
And look, some of the stuff you mentioned before, some of the stuff to think about too. If you've got perhaps that gap between capacity and billings, some of the reasons why you touched on, but is there fixed fee work? You're not scoping that fixed fee properly, so you're running over time, but in fact you don't know because you're not keeping time against a job, for example. Is there client fee pressure or market pressure, which you alluded to before? Does the market just not want to pay that? Is there inefficiencies of the wrong staff doing work on the jobs? You've got someone who's too expensive doing something that someone on half the salary could be doing, and they're not adding any additional value. So that links into your structure and the leverage of the staff and all that sort of stuff. You're spending a lot of time training junior staff because you don't have the induction systems and processes, etc., to get the junior staff up to speed. So it takes a junior staff 2 or 3 years to come up to speed, where it should take them 6 months to come up to speed, for example. Is there lots of rework? Is there scope creep? There's the list goes on. And I think without that analytical support or backing, how can you know? How can you possibly know? And I think that other theory is, what happens is that most professional services firms just work on what they built last year and the year before, and they might have some sort of number. If we put another staff member on, we should be able to get this much money. But they actually don't know who's performing, who's not, what's working, and what part of the business is working and what isn't.
And look, I've seen quite a few times where a firm wants to grow, and the assumption always is we're busy, we need to put more people on. But I like to first look at it and think, well, how can we free up capacity first? Where is everyone spending their time? What are some things we can automate or remove? And how can we make things more efficient? Sometimes there might be a lot of time being spent in meetings because the whip is not clear in a system. Sometimes there might be too much rework done because the scope wasn't set up correctly or wasn't handed off to the person right to start with. If you look at all of these things first, I would almost guarantee you'd be able to do a lot more in the firm just by looking at these things first. So if you're thinking to yourself, we're getting busy and things are a bit stressful, adding another person can actually sometimes contribute to that stress. It's another person to train, another person that may not work out. But taking a step back, looking at the structure like you mentioned, and then looking at the systems, you're going to free up capacity with your existing team.
That's right,
And I think you'll yield a better result.
Yeah, and that's how I think everyone wants to grow, by being efficient and with the least number of people possible. So you get back to that organisational architecture with growth. You get the owners on board, team structure and capabilities, right, your systems and processes. That leads into your marketing and sales. And then it's at the same time understanding your black hole. It's understanding your capacity via your billings to. And that's going to give you some answers around, gee whiz, do we actually need to put any staff on? It's actually a really good sort of first check. It's one of the first things I ask when I go into professional services firms. What's your capacity?
Yep.
And if they don't know, I'm trying to have a rough guess by I'm using that $140,000 per full-time equivalent as a bit of a marker, and just work it out from there. And then you can sort of quickly say, look, this firm, there's an issue here, or it's performing really well. Why? How can we assist that? Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So far we've looked at some principles to grow a firm, and then looked at being able to calculate what that black hole is, and to be able to define some data to be able to reference back to where we should grow. So maybe we should look at money. So
it's pretty important, isn't it?
Yeah, I love the model that you've got.
Thank you. Well, it's one of the key elements, isn't it? That when you grow, you've got to really look after your cash.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong in what we're about to discuss. There's nothing wrong in sharing this with your team and having it as one of the key pillars to your business success in a professional services firm. But this, I guess, what we're alluding to is sort of, how to financially manage your professional services business, or how to protect its cash. And I sort of, ask the questions, if you're not taking a regular profit distribution, if you're running the business from the bank account, if you don't really know how the business is performing, what your capacity is, etc. If you don't receive regular management reports, you're getting perhaps a return less than 25% of the fees that you're charging each year. You always seem to struggle at BAS or tax time to find big whacks of money. Then I think there's something that you need to look at with how you're actually financially managing the business. And I've come up with, which I know you love, Troy, but I've come up with the model.
I can't pronounce it.
I've come up with a model that, which I think though the model, like it's we've been talking now for a little bit, and the analogies, I'm using movie analogies and different bits and pieces, but I think it helps just paint the picture a little bit.
Definitely, yeah, and even to be able to communicate it to the team so you can get them on board. Before you share the model, I just wanted to add that
building the suspense here.
Yeah, I've not really met a business owner that doesn't want some kind of level of freedom and prosperity, or even a human. But let's pick one, prosperity. So most people want to be prosperous. Like there was a day where everyone used to have to wake up and have to go hunt for water, to go get that water and bring it. So it was a conscious thing you'd wake up and think about. These days we wake up and we have to consciously think about where's the money coming from. And a lot of people want to get to the point where that's no longer a thought, that the money's just there. But, I'm just so surprised at how people want prosperity or want freedom, but just are not willing to be able to put the systems and the process and the time involved to be able to track and manage their time, their money, and just sheer focus on it, so that one day the prosperity or the freedom will be there. Do you find that?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a really and I think one thing I'm excited about is that I think if you get a model and you take something as complex as managing the cash of a firm and you bring it down into something simple, I think it's a good first step to get some buy-in from the partners and also the team, so that one day prosperity is a real thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned the team. I think it's one of those things with the cash, that it doesn't have to be a personal owner issue. I'm not expecting the owners to be saying, gee, we've got no money in the bank account. But I think having cash readily available is a team ownership. It's a team ownership.
I think so, yeah.
So to go through the model, it's called the cash tetrahedron. And a tetrahedron is a triangular pyramid. So perhaps it's easier just to Google a triangular pyramid or a cash tetrahedron.
Be able to see it, yep.
Yeah, or a tetrahedron. But it's got four flat surfaces. There's one surface on the ground effectively, and then it comes up in a triangular pyramid. So then you've got three vertical surfaces all sort of touching each other. And where I've got this concept from is from what's called the fire tetrahedron. So you can Google that as well. But a fire tetrahedron is, if you can imagine, fire is on the bottom surface of the triangular pyramid. Then there's three elements that you need to have fire. Those three elements are heat, oxygen, and fuel. So if you take one of those elements away, there's no fire. So if you put water on a fire, the heat goes out. There's no fire. If you starve the fire of oxygen by smothering it, then there's no fire. If you take away the fuel that it's actually burning, or there's no fuel to burn, then there's no fire. So my analogy with the cash tetrahedron is cash is like fire. And there's three elements to having cash in a professional services firm, and those being workflow, invoicing, and WIP if that's your bag, but invoicing, and then debtors.
Yep.
And so if sort of the theory is that if one of those elements aren't present or not firing, or there's more than one not firing, then cash is going to be really difficult to come by.
Yeah, sure.
In your firm. So and that's something that I think you can share with the whole team.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's around the workflow, which we'll discuss in a second. But it's all the points around the workflow in the professional services firm. Then it's all the points around the invoicing. How are you invoicing? Does everybody know? Do your clients know? Does your team know? Is there template systems, etc.? And then how the debt is being followed up.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, if you're doing those three elements, you're going to have a really good chance of having cash in your business.
Yeah, sure. And then, so if cash is the end outcome, and then these three elements is the process to achieve it, and by having the data right from the workflow through to the WIP and the invoicing and then the debtors, you can identify what's not working, and then, you can plug that hole and then the cash will be there.
The workflow, for me, those three elements, workflow is the biggest one. So workflow for me talks of systems and processes, and then also your team structure. So you have to have that right. So your team structure's got to be right to support the business, and then your systems and processes have to be there as well. And I sort of liken it to a workflow map. Does the firm have a map or a way they actually produce their work? I'm sure everyone does. You have to if you're in business, but
sometimes it's in someone's head.
That's right. It's in someone's head, or there's actually several different versions of what it should look like. So that's the conscious effort. Okay, what does our actual workflow map look like? Let's map it out, get it down on paper, and then let's start refining and improving it. And that sort of links into the team structure and capabilities. And then that for me is sort of one of the first and most important steps in making sure that cash is available in your business, because jobs can be done quickly and as efficiently as possible. Clients are happy with the outcome, and you're not sort of there's not several different ways to do something. Junior staff are coming in not sure who to follow to do what, or depending on who they're following, they've got to produce the work a certain way. So it's something we do this in our business. Being a professional services firm, so we have a workflow map in our business which maps through the whole way we do our work. And a new junior comes in and they learn that process. And it brings them up quickly.
if we draw back from the manufacturing analogy, this is the workflow. This is the factory line, and what I really like is that when the firm focuses on the innovation and the development of the workflow, too often something that can stifle the culture of a firm is when the onus of innovation, quality, professionalism is on the person. And then you'll have some people performing, you'll have some people not, and you'll have partners that will either encourage particular people or discourage, or just be giving negative support to people that aren't performing. But if you take it away from the person, stop focusing on the person and actually develop the workflow, the better the workflow gets, the more clear it is. The more clear it is, the team member will be able to understand it and see the reason behind it. And if the team member can see it, understand it, use it, you're going to get the results you want. But if you just keep pointing the finger at the person, you're just going to have that revolving door, and your firm will never grow. But if the workflow develops and becomes more detailed,
it's scalable, isn't it?
That's right.
It's scalable and it's efficient.
Yep. And I think to me it's a more productive thing to have the entire team focused on developing a workflow and systems together, unified, rather than having team members that you do and don't like.
No, that's right, and that's why I go back to this cash tetrahedron for professional services firms. It's buy-in across the whole team. I think everyone wants to work in a successful business. Everyone wants to do things best practice, and that's generally what people do when they're in business. But it's just trying to bring in and unify everyone together to achieve the best and most efficient and structured and streamlined workflow process possible.
Yeah.
So that's the first element of it. Then I think the second most important for me is invoicing. And that sort of seems simple. And my experience is actually most professional services firms do invoicing pretty well, and they do workflow badly and debt collection badly. So they're the 2 out of the 3 elements that sort of are wanting a little bit. But invoicing, I go back to, I don't care how you invoice. Let's just have a process and a known way that you invoice.
Yeah.
You know, so do you do value-based pricing? That's fine. Do you do fixed fee? You know, so you do a heavy scope and a fixed fee, or do you just sort of do a rough estimate and sort of lean on your reputation and history as to what you think it will be, or do you do an hourly rate type thing?
Yeah.
So I don't mind how you do it. Let's just get it clear. Let's have it documented. Let's have all the staff empowered to be able to do invoicing, so it's not coming up to the, you know, that's one of the
there's no
things.
bottleneck in it.
Yes, there's no bottleneck. Let's have templates and let's educate the clients on how they're being charged as well.
Yeah. Oh, look, there was an IT firm that when we first went in and did analysis on the business, there were some invoices that hadn't been sent and they were 6 months old. Well, you know, it's sometimes
that's not uncommon.
No, yeah. Yep.
That's not uncommon, you know. Yeah, and you've got to have best practice around it, don't you? So, you know,
you've got
are you billing a certain part up front, or are you billing on completion? You know, is it going out with the work? Yeah.
And if you dig deep enough, like the reason, so if each firm bills differently, whether it's fixed fee or hourly rate or whatever, normally the reason why you're doing that is there's a specific reason. And, you know, if like you said, get that clear, it's actually a very good sales tool. You know, you bring it up front and you tell them this is why we do what we do, because of that reason. You know, it's unified and clear from the start of the client engagement right through, and the clarity is what supports that relationship. Yeah.
No, you're spot on. And then, so once you understand the invoicing, get that right, then that for me leads into your debt collection process. You know, is there a documented process? You know, I mean, typically as professional services firms, you know, we sort of, and I put we because we're in that bucket as well. You know, if things are going well, perhaps you're not chasing your debtors as hard, or you're not sticking to the policy, or you've got, you know, good relationships with a certain client, so you're not pushing them as hard as what you probably should if you didn't have a good relationship, or is a bit more transactional. And so it's really important to have a procedure. Once again, trying to take it out of the owner's hands, and have it as something that the whole team is following and understands it just happens. You know, so what's happening 15 days after, what's happening 30 days after, 45, you know, when's it escalating to an owner? Perhaps, my experience is, you know, if I send an email to a client with the invoice attached, hey, such and such, you know, this is now 60 days overdue, you know, what's happening? I get a far better response than if a team member's doing it, but I can't be doing that all the time. So it's you know, it's one of those debtors escalating to an appropriate level for an owner, or when does it go external to a debt collection agency, etc. So
it's just about having that defined, isn't it? And then just
but
following it.
Yeah, if you don't, then your cash. You know, I go back to the cash tetrahedron. You know, your workflow's got to be right. You know, which is systems, processes, best practice. Your team structure. I think falls under the workflow, and then you've got how are you invoicing. And then the last but not least is your debtors. You know, how are you going to follow your debtors up? That's going to be the answer if your cash is going to be there or not, I think.
No, that's right. Yeah, well, all 3 elements combined.
That's right.
It'll be there.
Gives you cash. Let's hope so. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, so maybe we'll do a bit of a recap for everyone. I'll see if I can do my best. To embark on the journey to grow the firm, first of all, start with a strategy. So is everyone really clear on what growth looks like?
Do the owners want it?
Do the owners want it? And is there very clear who it is that you want to do work with and what services you provide? Be really clear around that. Then having a structure to support that growth, making sure everyone's roles, responsibilities, KPIs are really clear. And then having great systems to support the workflow. So how does work come in? How do we do it? And how does it go out? And are our systems being automated to the point where it's reducing dependency on key people, and there's a centralized system that people go to instead of a person for information? Then underneath that, you've got the cash flow,
cash tetrahedron,
which is the 3 core elements to make sure that you're managing them so that the cash is there. So I think if people follow that structure, I think that'd be a great place to start.
No, that's right. And I guess overlaying all that, Troy, is is understanding your capacity via your billings. You know, that black hole.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that sort of runs along the side the whole time. I think as you're growing and developing and wanting to grow, etc.
Yeah.
It's are we actually performing now?
Yeah. And look, I actually really, really like the way that you do that. And I think it's really important that, you know, everyone listening, if you're running a firm and you've got a team, you don't know what your capacity is, you don't know what your black hole is, this would be probably one of the first things I recommend you do.
Yeah, what's the first thing I do when I walk in?
There you go.
Yeah, I'm working out how many staff are there to start with, and then just getting a feel of what the fees should be.
Yeah.
The billing level should be.
So there's a white paper or two that you've got on these topics, which we'll make available. People can download around here. I'm just looking at my marketing guy. He's nodding his head. We've also got a business health checklist, so a checklist that you can go through and assess what's working and what's not working for you. So I think, if you've really enjoyed what Mark's been talking about today, that'd be nice, simple next steps to take.
Yep, that sounds good.
But Mark, thank you very much for coming in today, and I trust our audience has gotten some good value from you.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Troy.
No worries. Good on you. Thanks, mate.